Hello and welcome. The US government, it's this huge, sprawling system of agencies, rules, and procedures. It can feel pretty intimidating, right? But whether you're starting a business, crossing a border, or just filing your taxes, you're interacting with it. So today, we're going to break down how to navigate it all a little more effectively.
And, this quote, it really gets at one of the biggest moments a person can have with the government, becoming a citizen. But the truth is, we all interact with this system constantly, and often in ways that are a lot less momentous. From travel to taxes, just knowing how the system works is absolutely crucial, and that's what we're going to explore.
Just think about the two extremes of security for a second. At the Super Bowl, you've got a high-tech fortress. But then you go to huge stretches of the northern border, and the main security tool is a cleared path in the woods called the slash. This contrast tells you something really important. Government systems are tailored to the situation, from the most complex technology to, the simple need for a clear line of sight.
So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with how you first enter the system. Then we'll get into the rules for work and taxes. After that, we'll navigate the more formal legal channels, see what happens when you're under the microscope, and, this is a big one, we'll show you exactly where to find an advocate when you need one.
Okay, let's dive in. Our journey kicks off at that very first point of contact, actually entering the system. And while we might immediately think of airports and borders, the ways you engage with the government are pretty vast. See, the system is basically designed to sort people based on risk. If you're willing to give your information up front for programs like Global Entry or TSA PreCheck, the government rewards you with a much faster, more streamlined experience. It's basically a trade-off, right? You provide more data, you get more convenience. But then, you go from the hyper-efficiency of TSA PreCheck to a completely different world. On the northern border, security isn't about biometrics, it's about keeping this path, the slash, clear of trees and brush. The principle is as old as time. You need a clear line of sight. It's a surprisingly low-tech solution to a very complex problem, and it just goes to show how enforcement adapts to the environment. Alright, so once you're in the system, what's next? Well, you're probably going to participate in the economy. And that brings on a whole new set of interactions with the government, all centered around work, business, and of course, taxes. Let's look at the rules of the game. Okay, if you own a business, this is a huge question. You know you need an expert for your taxes, but not all experts are created equal. So, who can you really trust? This table lays out a really clear hierarchy. Up at the top, you've got your enrolled agents, CPAs, and attorneys. They have what's called unlimited practice rights, which means they can represent you in any situation with the IRS. Then down at the bottom, you have other preparers with more limited credentials. The key takeaway? You've got to match your preparer's authority to how complicated your finances actually are. Okay, but here is the absolute most important thing to remember. No matter who you hire, you are legally on the hook for every single number on your tax return. So you have to be on the lookout for red flags, like someone promising you a massive refund or basing their fee on a percentage of it. And the biggest rule of all, never ever sign a blank tax form. Now we're going to shift gears and move into what can be one of the most formal and complex parts of this whole journey, the immigration legal system. I know it can seem intimidating, but when you break it down, it becomes a lot clearer. This here, it basically lays out the path of a removal proceeding. It all starts with a notice to appear. Now, a really critical distinction here is that this is a civil, administrative process. We are not talking about a criminal trial. It moves from an initial hearing to a more intense, trial-like individual hearing, and it all leads up to a judge's final decision. Now, one of the key forms of relief in these proceedings is asylum, and the legal standard is very, very specific. It's not about looking for a better job. It's about having a credible fear of persecution that's directly tied to one of these 5 things: your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or social group. Now let's compare asylum to a similar protection called withholding of removal. The differences here are absolutely critical. Notice on the left, asylum has that strict one-year deadline, but it can lead to a green card. On the right, withholding of removal has no deadline, but it offers no path to permanent residency. It's actually a higher legal bar to clear, but it acts as a safety net for people who might not qualify for asylum.
All right, let's switch gears again. What happens when you or your business finds itself directly under the microscope? This is where you hear terms like audits and due diligence thrown around.
You know, when you hear the words IRS examination, your heart probably skips a beat, right? You think it's about you. But sometimes it's actually about your tax preparer. A due diligence examination is essentially an audit of the preparer, making sure they're asking the right questions and playing by the rules for their clients.
Okay, due diligence. It's one of those formal-sounding terms. But what does it actually look like in the real world when you're sitting across from your tax preparer?
Well, this quote from an IRS training video just nails it. Due diligence means your preparer is legally required to ask you detailed personal questions. They aren't just being nosy, they're legally obligated to verify if you're actually eligible for certain tax credits. It's all about making sure the return is accurate, and it puts the responsibility on them to get the facts straight. So, after going through all these rules and complex procedures, you might be feeling a little overwhelmed, and that's totally fair. But here's the good news. The system isn't just a maze of rules. It also has resources built right in that are designed specifically to help you. Meet the Taxpayer Advocate Service, or TAS. Seriously, think of them as your personal advocate inside the IRS. They're an independent organization, and their only mission is to be your voice. If you're hitting a brick wall with the IRS, facing a huge problem, or you're just stuck in a bureaucratic loop, TAS is who you call to cut through that red tape. And hey, it's not just for tax problems. The Small Business Administration has its own watchdog, the Ombudsman. If your business is facing what feels like unfair enforcement from any federal agency, whether it's the IRS, the EPA, or OSHA, the Ombudsman acts as a neutral party to make sure you're getting a fair shake. And do these advocates get results? You bet! In one case study, the Taxpayer Advocate Service helped a small business get this, over $22,000 in penalties completely waived after they stepped in to review the situation. That's a real-world impact that can literally save a business. Look, the biggest takeaway from all of this is that you are not on your own. There are free official channels you can turn to for help. So right here, this is the contact information for both the Taxpayer Advocate Service and the SBA Ombudsman. You might want to keep this handy. So at the end of the day, yeah, this system is complex. It can feel like this big, impenetrable fortress, but it's also built with its own tools for support right inside. The real question isn't whether they exist. It's, are you going to use them when you need to? Thanks for tuning in.